joined by Antonio Flores from Lawbird. Good morning to you, Antonio.
Good morning, Giles. All good, my friend?
Yeah, all very good indeed. Very good indeed. Right then, we're looking at a subject that's been coming up, which you've been crossing your radar quite a lot after Brexit. Also one about US and other non-EU citizens, and it's about what should happen if you exceed your minimum stay.
That's correct. Yeah, this is something that a question we're being asked all the time, and basically, it's difficult to Sorry, let me just. I'm sorry. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, you just walked down a pothole or something. You're right there, Antonio.
Just the radio. The radio came up.
Right.
No, so sorry, Giles. Basically, after Brexit, a lot of our clients, and we had a lot of British clients, we still have, the ones that didn't get residency, and the ones who've chosen not to get residency, because they think they can just simply go in and out, and they wouldn't have an issue with that, which is absolutely fine, so long as you don't overstay. But a lot of them do ask, what happens if I stay a few more days? It's not convenient for me to go, and I'd like to stay a few more days, and so on. And anyway, so we're getting a lot of questions about this situation, not only by people from the United Kingdom, but also from other countries, both countries that require a visa to come into Europe and those that don't. Okay, so the answer really is never unique. You can't give one single answer for all the situations, because it depends on many, many factors. Overstaying can be a complete non-issue, or it can be a very complicated situation as well. Okay, so for example, someone who is coming from a non-visa country who overstays by 10 days, nobody will detect it. They'll go back to their countries. They'll come back again, and nobody will know, and it will be a non-issue. Okay, someone who decides to stay for a number of years after the maximum period may run into trouble. So it depends. Now, what the law says in this respect is that if you overstay, you can be fined. So you can be fined anything from 500 to 10,000 euros. Okay, so that's something that can be pretty much automatic. Okay, the person exceeding the maximum stay in Spain can be fined between 500 and 100,000. Additionally, you can also be expelled from the European Union as a whole in certain circumstances. If you, for example, decide not to leave when they tell you to leave, then they can start a file and they can expel you, and you could also have trouble to come back in certain circumstances. Okay. Now, it is important. There is a difference between people who come from countries that need a visa and those who don't need a visa, and it's a very practical difference. If the police pulls you over and you have a passport full of stamps, which I've seen some, completely full of stamps, they just don't know when you came in, when you went out. They would need at least 2 hours to establish that.
Right.
But if you have a visa, it's different. You have a visa if you come from a country like Morocco, or you come from Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. Well, you have a visa on your passport, and they can see that visa is valid for, say, 6 months. So if you've overstayed, that visa is 3 years old or whatever, then they will know exactly that you've overstayed. And then so different things can happen. Now, the police who detects you are illegal in Spain, or irregular, as the law says, they can do a number of things. They can politely ask you to leave the country ASAP. They say, mate, I don't want to see you again. Make sure you get on the next flight back to your country, and that's it. Nothing happens. Fine, that police doesn't want anything to do with this, and they just tell you to leave. You're not causing any problems or whatever. They can also ask you to go to the police station, and obviously, they go with you, or they call you to the police station if you have a home, for example, if you have a house here. And in some cases, they can also interview you there. You can be booked in, and they can start a file. So they say, okay, if you live in such a place, you give them an address, and they'll notify you that you exceeded your stay and you need to leave, and they'll open a file. Now, the moment you leave, that file closes. So that's it, end of story. They can also, as has happened to people I know, they can lock you up for the night. This happened. Okay, I don't think it would happen to a British person, frankly speaking, but it would happen to a South American person, as I've, experienced with clients of our firm. Okay, so we've had a case of a person from Bolivia. They spent the night in prison cells because they had overstayed. They thought it was an irregular situation that required that kind of treatment. So it depends as well where you come from. And in extreme cases, they can actually arrest you. They can take you to court, and the court can order you'll be sent to a sort of immigration detention center. Okay, so that you'd be then deported within 60 days. Now that's very extreme cases, and typically for people who've committed crimes or something like this. Okay.
I mean, I was hearing. I mean, though you shouldn't put any. But I mean, I was getting phone calls in my other life as a journalist with people coming to me saying, "Oh yeah, I've just been told. I've just been in a. It was all somebody who's just been in a bar, and they're locking up British people and they're keeping them in this camp outside the airport, and they're all being put on a flight back to the UK tomorrow." I mean, there were some wild and wonderful stories out there, Antonio.
Oh, the stories never end. I mean, and they just simply become real all of a sudden. But no, I've never had any experience with any British clients, myself or even other lawyers, friends or whoever, that know of any British person that has actually been detained and expelled. It must have happened, especially anyone who gets involved in some kind of scuffle fight, typical where you've overstayed as well. But it wouldn't be too common. Now, there's also a funny thing about all of this. And that's that the law in Spain has another side to this topic, and that's that if you've overstayed for 3 years in Spain illegally, the law says that you can actually become regular and you can become legal. Okay,
right?
And tens of thousands of people have become regular through this route. The system is called arraigo, which is the kind of permanency is actually being rooted into Spain. So what they say is, if you've been for 3 years and you can prove it, and you have a job offer, which typically you can get from someone, a friend or family, whatever, then they'll give you the residency in Spain. So, in these cases, not only overstaying in Spain is not bad, but it's actually good, and they actually, give you the prize of the residency if you've managed to overstay by 3 years and they haven't caught you. So, two sides of the coin.
So keep your head down, basically, and your nose clean, and whatever else, and you might. I mean, that sounds like it should be a TV game show. To be honest with you, Antonio.
It's a very interesting one, but we've done it a lot, countless times, and it is a bit also in the nature of, I think this country is not a country that is too harsh with immigration. They tend to be quite open and quite flexible. And this is a measure that was implemented some years ago, and it's worked very well. The people who've been staying in Spain peacefully for a number of years without causing any trouble, and they have a clean, police record, no issues, they become regulars and they start, because, the idea here is that if you have people who are in an illegal situation for far too long, they're going to end up costing money to the government. So they might as well get onto a payroll and onto the Social Security, and they start producing for the country as well. So there's a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people who've become residents through this route.
And if you think about it, that's quite a sensible policy, isn't it? And they're just sort of marching people to the nearest airport or the nearest port or the nearest border and pushing them over, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, exactly. All advanced countries, modern countries, they have these systems to allow people to eventually, become, the bona fide people who just want to have a good life and produce and have a family and be respectable citizens, whichever country they are. They embrace them. They Spanish law definitely does that, and as well, the system. I mean, I have experience in the immigration department of the police station, for example, in Marbella and Fuengirola, and they're not excessively harsh. Okay, yes, you can be expelled, you can be chucked out, but most of the times, what they'll tell you is, okay, you leave voluntarily. I'll give you a couple of weeks. Bring me like a flight, a booked flight, boarding pass, whatever it is, and then we'll close this file. And then you go back, and then you apply for your residency, and you come back in a legal way. So you don't get any kind of a sort of a record or bad mark or anything that will not allow you to come back. So they are quite flexible. So yeah, I mean, I've known all sorts. I've known people overstaying, people in countries that didn't require, people who were, money people who decide to overstay because they can't be bothered. People as well, immigrants who want to live in Spain and work for someone else, they've been here for years, and eventually they become residents. So, you tend to get all sorts. But the ideal situation is always to be respectful of the maximum stay period so that you stay out of trouble.
Right. Well, that should be the underlying principle of most things you try and do in Spain, obviously. But
because you see, some people are just lazy and they just don't want to go back.
Yeah.
They think, I don't want to get another flight 3 months out and then I'm back on 3 months. So they say, I'm going to spend Christmas here and I'm going to lie low. I'm not going to get into trouble or whatever, So fine, nothing happens, And there's a lot of people who are getting used to that way of functioning.
Yeah.
Where police is not excessively keen on looking at passports. Because if you think about it, a guy who pulls you over, you have a British passport, so long as you've got your driving license in order and you haven't got any record or any sort of anything wrong, they're not going to be looking at your in and out stamps, They
Sure.
will not do it. They're just not bothered. They haven't got the time and they haven't got the means, the resources. Because if they do, they have to take you to the police station and then they have to sit down and they have to take your passport and spend a minimum of, say half an hour, 45 minutes, sometimes 1 hour to go through all the stamps and then decide whether you've overstayed. So most of the time they have to go to the Schengen online calculator, which is a website, the European Union website, where it tells you, how many days you're allowed to stay. So, it's not an easy thing. But most of the times they just let you go and they don't bother.
Interesting. Indeed. I think the Arago one is an interesting one, if that's what you call it correctly, because after 3 years, and if you haven't got yourself into any trouble, and again, the main thing is obviously is they're more bothered in getting people who shouldn't be here and are up to, if you like, nefarious or no good practices.
Yeah, correct. Those are out. Those they don't want them here. But hardworking, law-abiding citizens who have the only crime they've committed is not to have a legal permit to stay in Spain. They won't be chucked out. You can be eventually. But if you stay here for 3 years, you don't really get into any issues, any trouble. Police are not going to have a problem. And
again, so don't believe the tales that you hear that so and so was stopped at a police checkpoint, they didn't have the paperwork in order, and they were marched straight onto the nearest flight to Luton, because that is an absolute urban myth.
I think it's an urban myth. I've not known anyone who's been in that situation. I'm sure someone's been in that situation, but not for those reasons. Probably for other reasons. It's different,
Indeed.
But I don't think for just overstaying, they've been deported. Definitely not someone from the United Kingdom or any other country that doesn't require a visa. Because, you do have preferential deportations, protocols for certain countries. And, again, we sort of bring up the idea of racism, Why is one citizen of a country dealt with differently from the others? Well, that's public policy. That's the way things are, If you come from a certain country, like Iraq or Syria, they check your passport, they're going to be much more interested in knowing what are you up to in this country than someone from the United Kingdom. That's the way it is,
This is also true. If people want to find more information about this, or just got some questions, or want to break cover in the nicest possible way and get their paperwork in order, Antonio, where can they find you? Where's the best place to go?
So they can call us on 952-861890. And they can also email us on info@lawbird.com.
And believe it or not, we're coming to that time of the year, so I don't know if we're going to speak to you before Christmas. So if we don't, I think it's a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Antonio, if we don't speak before then.
Same to you and the team. Same to you and the team, absolutely.
Good. Antonio Flores from Lawbird, as always, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure, Giles. Thanks to you.